In this video, I am going to help you figure out this bike right here, the 2025 Orbea Wild. I call it the Enigma machine because it is kind of hard to figure out. It is a big bike that climbs well, wins all the races, the electric bike races, but is it the right bike for you? What's up everyone, FC here from E-MTB Review, and I review a lot of e-bikes, a lot of long travel e-bikes lately, and everyone's been asking me to review this guy right here because it looks good, it's got the most travel, it's got that Bosch motor. So I'm here to tell you all about it. And you know, I watched all the video reviews, but I can't figure it out. They just say it's best, and no one shows any weakness of this bike. But what I'm going to try to do is give you some insight, give you some true pros and cons about this bike and help you figure out if it's the right bike for you. So what is it? It is a big travel e-mountain bike by Orbea from Spain, and it's the second generation. So it has 170 millimeters front travel, 170 meters rear on 29er wheels, mullet capable as well, has the Bosch motor, the latest, the CX5, yes, with a 600 or 750 battery with an extender, and it's carbon frame, aluminum frame. It has a short travel version. It's got the horse link suspension right here. So it's the second generation. As I said, they introduced it 2023. So pretty quickly, within like a year and a half, they said, oh, here's the new version. So the new version is just a kind of a tweak. I think the main thing is they needed to change the motor mount because the CX5, the latest from Bosch, has a new 2-bolt configuration instead of 4. So they had to do that. So they said, hey, let's address some of the issues that we have. Most notably, they wanted the capability to do 27.5 rear wheel capability, otherwise known as mullet or MX. Very important in e-bikes, I believe. So they with a different linkage, they will allow you to have a 27 rear wheel with exact same bottom bracket height and suspension kinematics. Okay, the other thing they changed was the head angle was 664. Now they went 63 and a half, just ever so slightly. Reach is the same, and the seat tube is 77 and a half, which is kind of steep. It's a big travel bike with a big wheelbase, and it's a little high, a little long. Bottom bracket's got to be a little high, 358, and then the chainstay is 448. You know, so it's close to 450. So there it is. It's a big bruiser bike, and I'm here to tell you how does it ride, and you know, pros and cons and all that jazz. Okay, so the most important thing, you know, as soon as my friends saw that I had this bike, I just posted a photo. They were like, how is it? How is it? Is it for me? How does it ride? So that's what you're most curious about. And how it rides, it is a burly, like everyone said, it is a burly, capable machine on the rocky, beastie downhills. That's what it's good at. You know, when you're racing down this you know, chundery terrain, this thing is fast. When it can open up, it is fast. But there's some nuances to that. You know, when it's not that fast, when it's kind of tight and whatnot, it's not that easy to turn. You know, because of the wheelbase, the height and whatnot, not that easy to turn. You really have to show it who's boss. It took me like 5 rides before I could get to the same level as I was turning my other bikes. You know, even just a simple Levo Shuttle LT as well. So you gotta really muscle it. But you know, at the end of the day, it's not gonna turn as well as those guys because those have mullet wheels and have shorter stays. The other thing is this thing, the front triangle, I think is stiff. It's a stiff front triangle. They say it's 10% stiffer than their regular bikes because of the battery. I'm not sure that's a great decision because, you know, it transmits a lot of feedback and shock to you, and you gotta. It doesn't kind of bend and conform as easily to the terrain. It's a very subtle difference, but I think that's kind of what I'm feeling. You know, it's got a stiff front end. Okay, and related to the descending, the first 3 rides, what I kept doing was I kept softening up the rear shock. I've come to the conclusion it's just not as supple and smooth as the other bikes. And the reason is, they've really optimized this for climbing as well as descending. To win an EWS race, it was called EWSE, and now it's called like EDRE. So that level of racing that nobody does. To win that, you got to do well on the climbs as well. You got to have the right motor. It's got to be Bosch, and you got to have be an efficient climber as well, with at least the least taxing amount of effort on the rider as possible. So they're ready for the downhills. And the downhills, they always have punchy ups anyway, plus the other bikes. It's a performance racing machine. So you got to remember that. If there was one way to characterize this, it's a racing machine. So up and down, and it's a little stiffer, a little more responsive. You got to be aggressive. You got to work out and stuff to get the most out of this guy. Okay, the next thing I'll cover is what's it like. How much does it cost? This is the LTD, the limited model. This is $12,000, but it goes all the way down to $6,500 with an alloy frame. I would go for those because you get the same motor, and the alloy of Orbea is top notch. You can't even tell it's alloy, how they smooth out the welds and whatnot. So 65 to 12 grand, and they work a lot with Shimano on the brakes, and then now they're using SRAM transmission XX for this because SRAM transmission stepped up their game. They overtook Shimano. So the CX5 motor is the king, meaning CX4 was already the best, and the 5, they worked on a few things, most notably the rattle. If you're very sensitive to noise, the rattle is gone. Climbing, it got a little more quiet. It's got some more sensors, so when you're in walk mode, it knows the attitude of your bike, and it won't just drag you up the hill where you can't walk. So some other details about this bike is, one is, even though it has SRAM access, the battery is now, it's missing the access battery, which I hate because it keeps dying on me, keeps dying on my friends. We actually just carry access batteries because it's going to happen. But this one feeds off the main battery, so you'll never run out. The caveat on that is the motor has to be on. When the motor's on, it has a little inverter that converts the 36 volts to 7 volts, and then you can have it on. So when the motor's off, it does not shift. If you, for some reason, are able to drain it to zero while you're riding, which is hard to do because you won't have a shifter anymore. So that's a little caveat of that. Air-gone grips, very nice. And then they have their own internal cable routing, which goes through the headset. It is controversial, to say the least. Okay, great Bosch motor, and really what puts it over the top is the ability for their Power More extender, 250 watt hours, to be used on their full powered bikes as well. So really cool. And so the limited, they put a 600 on it. This is the racing machine, I think. They put a 600. You can't buy it with anything else, but the other models you can buy with 750. With 600 plus the extender, you have 850. So it will address most needs of riders. All right, let's go through some pros and cons, or cons and pros, so we leave on a high note. And I think this is key because I haven't heard any weaknesses of this bike, but I'm here to give you some. Every review I do, I'll do pros and cons. So don't think this is a bad bike. Just I'm saying cons. Okay, so the first one is it's kind of a stiff ride, and kind of hard to turn because of the things I mentioned. Stiff rear triangle and a pedaling platform. It's not as supple as what you would expect from a 170 millimeter rear travel bike. So you really have to get on it. You got to be racing. You got to muscle this bike and show it who's boss. Related to that is, it's kind of big, 63 and a half, increase the wheelbase with no adjustability whatsoever. And then your chainstays are long, 448, with a high kind of a high bottom bracket because of all that travel. So like I mentioned, this is available in mullet as well. You can order it as mullet, but I think they underestimated the demand for mullet because they're out of stock. The link is out of stock till January. So they're gonna send me one as soon as humanly possible. Okay, a few other knocks, just little things on the weaknesses side. So this thing is beautiful. It's kind of the signature avant-garde piece of the Wild, but it is in the way. They said they use it for tuning the stiffness. No other bike has this, and they're stiff enough. They're plenty stiff. Maybe this thing made it a little stiffer than what I want, but it's in the way of the shock. Puts in with that lever, doing all the compression knobs, adding air. I almost couldn't do it with my pump, but I was able to go under here to add air. The other thing is when you slide in the extender battery, this thing is in the way. So what they do is they lift it up to make it fit in that space. But that lift, it's a 3.5-pound battery, and you want it as low as possible. And these bars kind of increase your center of gravity because of that. A couple other details. This bar is too straight. I'm not sure why it's so straight. It's like my XC bars, and it's 810. Because of these bar ends or these grips that they use. So a little bit of a ill fit for this kind of bike. You got to have more sweep, I think, and maybe not that wide. And then finally, the Bosch, as good as it is, it needs a display. You need to know whether you're at 1% or 10%. And with this display, you can't tell. You can only tell in 10% increments, especially since they're powering their access of that. You need to know 1%, so you stop using that motor and just use it to make sure your shifter keeps working. And people say, oh, it's a racing bike. You don't need all that info. You can buy it if you want. No, we want that info. We just want it integrated and discrete. Like the DJI display with all the data in the world, but it's on the top tube. The Crestline too. They were able to figure out how to put the display on the top tube even before Bosch offered it. But now Bosch has these little modules that show you in graphical units, what mode you're in, how much battery you have left, and whatnot. Okay, finally we'll get to the pros. The pros is it's a big travel capable machine that's pretty well sorted. If you want the most aggressive bike, most travel, this is a good package. It looks good. There's so many options from 6,500 to 12 grand. So they've done their homework. Orbea knows e-bikes, and they've done a good job. The fact that they went with Bosch and really made sure they're compatible with CX5 is a great thing, because CX5 is really good. Quiet up and no rattle going down, and very sensitive, very responsive. The other thing is they have a short travel version of it. It's called the ST. So what they did is they just put a 150 millimeter fork and 150 on the rear. Pretty similar chainstay and whatnot, but it's a lot cheaper. That one is 5,400 and 6,000. They're saying if you don't need all the travel, here's an option for you: aluminum frame, get you in under the 6 grand level. And another pro is the packaging. It's one of the most beautiful bikes around. There's so many color combinations. The beveling, once you see this up close, it is a looker on the carbon as well as aluminum. And they have a configurator that's the best in class. If you want to buy it as mullet, you want to buy it with, you change this, change that. And if you want a 600 battery, you could buy it with that, 750. And the 750 batteries, when you buy a 600, you say, hey, I want it lighter and I want an extender, they give you $250 off. So they're so ahead of their time in terms of options, buying options, configuration. So really well-sorted package. I wish they had more dealers in the Bay Area or everywhere. That's kind of a knock on them. But from their website, there's a lot of options available. Okay, so bottom line, what do you guys think? Is it for you? I hope I armed you with a few nuggets of information that's going to help you determine if this is what you want. The CX5 is really compelling, how much travel it has, but you got to consider that it's not the most supple bike out there. It's aggressive, and with that comes some compromises in comfort, in wheelbase, in stiffness, and all that. So I think if you're an aggressive rider and you want to beat all your friends, this could be really good. But what you have here is a great bruiser of a big travel bike. with the best motor available. Thank you very much.